Hey, Inspire Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. Thank you so much for joining us again today. My name is Jean Nolan, and I'm deeply honored and excited today to introduce our guests. One is a returning guest that you've already seen on our channel. We've talked about primary water. And today we also welcome Chief Jim Browneagle and his wife Gail, as well as Russell Anderson. Thank you all so much for taking the time today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ekatama, how are you, my relative?
Sintamahe, thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I want to jump right into it because this question is always on my mind and has been for many, many years. And I'm so honored to ask this question to you today. It's my deep belief that a lot of the indigenous wisdom of all indigenous peoples has been forgotten in this world. And it's my deep belief that if we can bring this wisdom and this knowledge to the current cultures of the world, that deep healing might and will take place. And I would love for you to speak on that, and if that is your belief as well. And how well do you think we're doing in this at this point?
Well, first of all, thank you. And it's really important that we talk about this, because one of the things that I'm proud is that I've had many mentors, my elders, my parents, and that's an ongoing thing in our community. We're taught that we have to look out for the seventh generation coming, and we have to be their positive mentors to show us how we're all connected. And it is one of our biggest frustrations that I see, for example, is the indigenous people, and you're right about what's going on with us, is that we were a matriarch society, and the people who came and invaded us are patriarch society. So everything is male dominated in terms of our rights, our laws, and our indigenous people never lived that way. The leaders were there not for themselves, for their egos, to make themselves rich, or they were there for their community. And that's what we were taught. And that every generation of elders were supposed to mentor their community and keep them together and understand. Because again, I think what has gone on is that, look at today, we're even talking about women's rights, all the men have, they make the clothes for the women. They just do look what the Supreme Court just did. Those are the things that separate us as humans. Because one of the things that I grew up with is that the matriarch society is there, and they basically are the teachers. And the males, we all learn from them. So we're empowered by our female elders. So there were female chiefs. I consider my wife a chief because of her experience and her family ties that she has. And she can speak to that herself, but she probably never heard me say this to her. But that's what I see. All our life has been dedicated to this understanding. And a good example, like you said, is the world is really, we're basically, capitalists are in charge of our world. And almost everything that our native people had is lost. The indigenous ways, a good example now, they're all talking about, because of the massive wildfires, we should be doing indigenous knowledge of, taking care of our forest. Well, unfortunately, it's just been lip service, and no one's really doing it. All these federal agencies have their own agendas, and they are in control, like, for example, of all the public lands. So that's why a lot of our tribes have different directions now. For example, gaming is a big issue with Indian tribes now, economic development, whereas we lose our contact. A good example, I always bring this abalone shell that I have here, if you can see it. Mm-hmm. This is our sacred tobacco. Now this is what is lost in many of our indigenous communities. We had a direct relationship with our plants and our animals. They were the waters, the air, those were all taught to us how important they were. That teaching is gone because now all our kids are in public school. They don't learn that anymore. And most of the elders were like, you're out of your old style now. We get over that and let's move on. But that knowledge is so important for us, for our mind, spirit, and body. And that's what we are. We're people that believe in the mind, spirit, and body of every person. And we look at, for example, our elders told us, look what these people who came from a different country do. When you have a problem in your mind, you go to see a psychologist. When there's something with your body, you go to see another doctor. So what they're showing is how they separate your spirit. That's why the spirit is what we protect the most, because the mind could tell you thousands of things. You could do, you could have brilliant people with the mind, but look at those brilliant people who created the atomic bomb. A woman would not do that. A female would not do that. And that's really the direction that is lost, I think, in America, because our females are second class. And with the indigenous community, they were right above us and equal with men. Again, so that's somewhat of it. I'd like Gail to go ahead and give her opinion, because we come from real good traditional backgrounds, and she has a large family as well of female leaders.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm a little ways away from home here. I'm 60 miles towards the coast. Valley, like Jim said, we are private landowners, and we were able to bring our matriarch system back. We've held our land for 141 years this October. And within my lifetime, it's just been women. My grandmothers and my mothers have taken responsibility and leadership in our community, which is phenomenal for this day and age. We have a lot of traditions. We've kept most of our traditions, our language, our foods, our respect for our environment, like Jim was mentioning, our plant medicines. But we haven't kept our ceremonies. And this, in my opinion, is the most strongest thing, is our ceremonies. It's builds a spiritual relationship to our communities and our families. And where I'm from, we lost our roundhouse after World War II, about 1945. And that was the only and main traditional upbringing that I wasn't fortunate to participate in. But coming here to Lake County, to Clear Lake, to a community who's continuing their ceremonies, you can see the difference. You can see that there's always this spirit of coming home for the children, for adults that come back to the roundhouse. And I think for me, that's the most important thing, is that we maintain that spiritualness. We can do everything else, even including having our land and our family. But without the spiritualness, we are somewhat lost. It's our grounding. It reminds us who we are, and that we are different than our neighbors, native people, but yet we are all together because we all share ceremony. So I really appreciate that. And I really feel that's going to be the strength that's going to help us all unite.
One of the things that it said to me, a lot of my elders, is, all of our people have this indigenous knowledge, and it's been erased from our memory. And a good example, we had the largest pharmacopoeia around. Our lands went all the way to the Pacific Ocean. And we had 14 different medicines that we basically controlled. A good example, when I first met Russ, we were talking about the water and other things. And then when the primary water came up, it struck something with me, because, we're the oldest right now civilization here. The lake itself is 2.5 million years old. Our legends tell us how we came out of that mountain, the volcanic mountain, and that we were here to take this medicine and to heal. Every place that we go, we had natural medicines to heal us. We had no sickness, not even a cold we had, because we had the medicines for it. All of those medicines have been erased by agriculture now. And we only have about 10% of that left. And so these are relatives that give us power and help. And we have to also show respect for them by maintaining them. Here's a good example. There was a nickname given to California Indians, and it was called diggers. Okay, now it's really, think about it. It's, really racist. But the whole point of what they didn't know is the native people walked around with a stick, and what they were doing was cultivating these plants. So we're not like the Europeans where we have to have our wine in a row. These were natural plants that were given to us by Mother Earth, and we're told about them through that. And that's how the teaching came, and that's why we were supposed to take that. So my tribe, I can trace back to all the commerce that we had with other tribes in our area, and it was all exchanging medicines, exchanging those things. And so we had so much, like the water. Now, let me get back to that. For example, a lot of people know about hot springs, and that became a big tourist attraction up here and all over. Everybody's rushing to the hot springs to dive in, whatever. Well, in our tradition, those hot springs were given to us by the Creator for healing purposes. And every one of them had a shaman associated with for the healing. And it was almost like, the 60s came in and, the hippie thing came in and, let's go party, And here, so all our sacred places like this have been exploited. And so there's that healing has stopped and the shamans have also gone. And so what they're saying is they're not going to come back until we respect this and bring those medicines back for all people. It was really ironic when we're actually in what they call a Superfund site. A mercury mine came in and not only destroyed the whole area, but contaminated all the water and the fish with mercury. And so that's what we had to live through. And yet we still have our relationship with these medicines. Like a good example, our animals, everyone treats them, they're wild animals. Well, our elders taught us that those are our relatives and they're our first teachers. And if you look at everything they do, so that's why many of our native people are named after specific animals, because of the fact that they learned from them and they treated them the same way. Those people don't realize it. Those animals are coming back to the same location that they've been coming to for the many generations. They're not just wild running around. See, and yet everyone looks at them that way. Most of them, they just want to hunt them. If they're not game that I can put a trophy on my wall, they don't care about the animal. But yet every one of them has a lesson for us. And that's what is so important, that we understand that. And so that is slowly coming back to our communities. And it's hard though, because now we have this, big tribal governments out there with big gaming, things, and they're losing our relationship with all of our relatives. And one last thing I would say about is that I remember getting really frustrated one time, and about this racist person was talking about Indian people. And I went back to my mother and I, told her about my frustration. And she goes, "Well, what are you doing about it?" I go, "Well, what do you want me to do? Get a gun, go fight them?" She goes, "No, teach them their history, their real history." That's what we're about. We're about learning. And see, but everyone thinks there's there's something else for us. And that's what our elders told us. That's how we go to our next spirit world. The good things that we did on this world for our people. So that's kind of what I was taught in my life.
It's so beautiful
And
what you said, that we need to learn about the history, about the true history, about our history and the history of all the peoples of the world. And studying this, I was astonished. I was always attracted to the Constitution, to the American Constitution. And I was always very much attracted to the indigenous teachings. So it took me a while to realize the deep connection, and how the American Constitution was deeply, deeply inspired by the Confederacy Constitution of the Six Nations. And how basically I always asked myself, how did the founding fathers, so to speak, even know about freedom when freedom was not a concept at that time, coming from monarchies in Europe and a very oppressive system? And I realized that the concept of freedom, they learned from the indigenous people, as they did so many other things. What they didn't acknowledge, unfortunately, was the importance of the female. And that was being left out. And that's, I think, why the imbalance happened, because they did not acknowledge this. As a matter of fact, as far as I know, only 3 times in the history of the United States government was that fact even acknowledged, that the indigenous peoples have heavily inspired, through many conferences and teachings, the Constitution. Do you think that if we find a way to bring this monumental fact, because it's a monumental fact, it must change the viewing of the history of this country profoundly? If this were common knowledge, do you think it would open the door to greater wisdom and listening and learning, so we can bring this wisdom into the mainstream, so to speak?
yes, oh, definitely. And that's what is needed. We need more people talking that way. Just by what you're saying, by speaking those words, that needs to get out into the spirit of everyone else. And we all, like a good example, we have so many, I have a lot of friends, non-Indian friends as well, non-Native friends, but they have a real positive spirit. And I keep saying, see, your ancestors believed in you. and so if we all close our eyes and let our hearts see one another, that's the true spirit of humanity, not our brains. Our brains keep continuing and mixing us up. And that's why we keep saying that you have to have that balance of mind, spirit, and body, and to be a person. And wherever I go, matter of fact, just last year, I coached a local high school team, a girls' fast pitch team. And I talked about, I'm a life coach, I said, and I teach mind, spirit, and body. And the girls looked at me in astonishment and said, Coach, tell me more. And so I started just telling them about it. And what I noticed in their play, in the way they treated one another and how they wanted to learn, came a whole new concept to them, instead of just, I got to compete. I got to be better than that person. And our team didn't do as well, but we won some games. And one of the best, I didn't bring it with me, but one of the girls wrote me a letter thanking me for teaching her that. And that one little thing is more important to me than a degree or award or whatever. That's the relationship we should have with one another, to be able to talk directly. And that's, again, mind, spirit, and body. So I again, the Constitution, like you said, I knew about the Iroquois, I knew about all, and see, that's why our teachings, the leaders here, where we actually said our leaders were punished. And that means that life is dedicated to serving your people, not yourself. And once you take that road, you are going to be a better person. Everyone around you, your family, they're going to feel that spirit. And all of us have that positive spirit. We just need to awaken it and understand we're all humans here, and we all need to come together as humans. But we have to respect those. Every one of us were tribal at one time, and we have to understand we have a relationship to one another. My parents would tell me all the time. No, I don't know if you know the symbol, the black, red, yellow, and white, but those are 4 colors of our sacred circle, and we honor those colors. And for example, we were told the color white is for our younger brother, and our younger brother, it's our duty to teach them. Not, kill them or anything like that. just think of it. There's a lot of younger brothers that are spoiled to get away with, everything because they're not taught. Nobody's taking the time. And that's what our people have taught us. If you see somebody that's racist, it's your job to talk to them, not to go fight with them. All right. And has been lost in many of our tribal groups today. But the great thing is we have a lot of elders that still understand that that's our responsibility to every human that we come across. We have a relationship with them. And I think once we connect that and understand we're all in this together here, what is going on in this world, look at what we could bring to understanding, to our, to the public, to socially, to help us all grow. And that's really what we need to do more with our life. And you're a person that is dedicated to that. You're going to have a really blessed life. And I've seen that in my life. And I'm so proud. Matter of fact, we're sitting here today in a local nonprofit organization called Konokotai. And it's a Native American wellness organization, the first ever of its kind here. And it's run by my family because they see that we need to go out to all the tribes, so what happens when the federal government now says, all right, you're a federally recognized tribe, our tribes start to treat each other like we're foreign countries. See, we lost that family value we had. So we had trade and commerce. Now, a good example, and this is what I talk about, my history. If you look at all our tribes, the locations of our people, we are people of the watershed. And if this United States could have been divided up instead of just by lines, if we went by our watershed, we would understand the responsibility we have to this sacred water and see how it flows to all, and how that water connects all of our families all the way down to the ocean, culturally, spiritually, economically. And that's really the commerce that is going on without the spiritual side of it now. See, and so it would show we all have a responsibility. So anyway, that's just, again, some of my thoughts on it.
Yes. Also, I really thank you for including the fact that when this Constitution was formed, that the grandmothers were left out. The grandmother circle is so important because it is the function of the matriarch that we on this continent came to appreciate. Because with the grandmothers or the matriarch, it's our practice of uplifting the hearts and souls of our people and our families, our communities, and all people. And if we can achieve a spiritualness in our lives, then it helps us open up to hear the voices of other people. And it's for our journey to help other people on their spiritual path to health and wellness. And for us, it brings us more meaningful life. And I think that's the view that we as women look at when we want to, especially now raising our family, because that's our primary duty that was left to us now, is that we raise our family. So I think the extension of what moms, grandmothers, what you've experienced is what you'll experience if females had more of a position than we do today. Most of the females, I think, in Congress are on hormone replacements. And that's a testosterone. That's a male hormone that they take. And I think it makes them more aggressive. And it doesn't allow the female part of them to come through their heart and their spirit and lead the people that way. So I think for Native people, I think for us, we remember that. It was our tradition that females had a say, and it's still in our heart. It's just been hidden from us because of modern society. So I think that's on its way back. So I think once we're able to appreciate more our moms and our grandmoms and our aunts and the females outside the home, we'll start to realize things can take a different turn. And so I think the next generation are embracing that on their road to wellness. Yeah. So it's wonderful.
And I think too, my mother taught me more probably than I ever learned in any school. You know, of how to be respectful and to learn and to teach. And you know, she didn't need a PhD to do that. You know, and a good example. Look at all of us. We came through a birth canal. Our women are the life givers, and you know, it wasn't until probably, you know, I was maybe 30. Every time my birthday came, instead of celebrating, I gave my mom a present, you know, for allowing me this journey. We don't do that all the time. We lost that connection. And a good example, we used to say, why we were so healthy is because look at how many back in the day babies grew up on breast milk.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, look at what American society did. They made that like it's evil. You know, they had to bring in formula now. So the women, it's the last thing they want to do is feed their baby. And that's the most nutritious value, spiritual value they could get. And that was eliminated, nursing. And that's just, like I said, some of the things that we have to understand that, you know, was in front of us. And then I can see it in the health of many of those people who are raised on breast milk versus formula. Just a little thing like that, you know. So yeah, there's so much knowledge that we could have if we bring that understanding of both the male and female back into our life.
I think it is so powerful to hear these words, especially in this time of great confusion. I call it this time of great confusion, and I think we're at the height of it, but which also gives me hope, because I believe after we pass that height, more clarity must come. I don't think there can be much more confusion than now. And Russell, I would like to ask you, if we look at the world today in this confused state, in this also depressed state, frustration because the knowledge is gone, the wisdom is gone, so you have no foundation to base it on. In my life, the more I learn about the indigenous wisdom and teachings, which are, and I acknowledge this, really far back, also the knowledge and the wisdom of my people back when they were indigenous people. It isn't just, it really includes the whole earth. The more I am in touch with it, the less confusion I feel, the more clarity I get about my own life, my purpose, my being. How is that for you? You've been friends for many years with Jim and Gail. You've worked together. You share purposes together. How is that in your life? And how's that journey for you, Russell?
Well, thanks for asking. And I just want to say more about this because of the gentleness that Jim has. And meeting Gail was just like melting, in a sense, in your heart. And, you know, if you get on the radio program every week, you can hear that. It's in the voice. And there are only a few people that can understand the importance of that one thing. And, you know, when I got back from touring the country, I was asked by another shaman to come to Clear Lake, and I didn't really understand what it meant. And when someone told me it was the oldest lake in the country, I go, why doesn't people tell me this? And when I had these papers together, you know, I just remember going to Jim because people would tell me, don't go to that reservation, you'll get killed. And, you know, I said, well, how would you feel if you lived on a mercury mine? You know, this whole thing, I don't know if you're hearing me now because the voices are different here, but I was asked to, you know, to go there spiritually, you know, in a sense, not by this other shaman, but, you know, by spiritually, because I had learned how something about H2O, and I knew that the H2O, and the extra H in H2O was that spirit of God. And the family structure is that extra H in the H2O, and that's where I seen Jim and Gail. I mean, they were really adamant in the fact that they were part of this group of people that stayed with their traditions. And I was like, how is this possible? You know, I can't see that in the white world. I can't. And, you know, and I began to realize, and Jim was absolutely right in all these things. But then there's also the other conditions that we all live in, because we know we need to be able to do this. I want to say that when Jim said, he says, if you find someone that's racist, then it's your job to talk to him. And that's what I saw from Jim. And I had a whole bunch of papers on these technologies that would help. And it was Jim and I think it's his cousin who's really dear to me. He said, I looked at the papers, and he said, thank you for the papers, but can you play guitar? and I said, well, I know a little Moody Blues and some Cat Stevens, and just gave me the guitar. We started playing guitar. That is the most important thing that I could ever imagine. Because I was scared out of my wits that I was going to get killed, And Jim just taught me something completely different. And I looked at this because what I learned, the family structure, and I don't know if I could say this on the air, but it's an orgasm. From what the science that I studied afterwards, it's an orgasm. The family structure is basically when male and female come together during an orgasm, they are the same. There's no difference between them. So what is pulling them apart? And I was puzzled for a long, long time, and I still am, because how could someone live in a mercury mine that was all knowing that those particles are there, and they would pull you away? They would, the greed and everything else that has to go along with that isn't part of that with Jim and Gail. It isn't part of that with the Native Americans, because those Native Americans were part of a lake or a volcano. That's the last of the oldest seeable volcanoes in the country. Not just this, not only seeable along the Ring of Fire, and then the Ring of Fire goes into the ocean. I don't know, we haven't talked much about that yet, but I think the important thing is the truth needs to come up about who we are and why we're doing it. Jim literally told me, he said, you need to go down in the Bay Area. He said, I don't know if you remember this, Jim, but you told me you need to go down the Bay Area and find out what's going on with those people. And I found out that, there was a study that was about the geysers, basically, because they needed to be, there's these geysers that's part of the Clear Lake caldera that I didn't know about. Even there was a caldera there, but it's the last of the oldest seeable volcanoes. So what did I find out? They used it so that they could put wastewater in the geysers to create electricity. And I'm saying, well, what else would they use it for except for to find out that there was this movement of volcanoes that existed along the Ring of Fire, and the last, the oldest seeable, was where Jim and Gail lived. The understanding of that is so profound for me. And, even if people don't understand it, I know it's in their heart. And I am just so happy to talk to you and to talk to Gail and Jim, which they melt my heart every time I see it, because I don't want to disturb them, because they're the shamans of this country. I don't that, because what their tradition accepted the fact that we are all one. That's the united understanding of primary water, or what water really is to people, instead of polluting it. So I'm only here to just tell them this simple little story that I was taught to do, and understand that we are one with each other, and even the white people can be part of that. In this male dominance, these particles that exist that control us have to be understood. And I'm just here to announce that to my best friends here. Even if they didn't like me, I know that they are part of my heart. So thank you for doing this, Sean. This is important to me. And even I said the wrong thing, Jim, that's okay, because you can kick me out of any group, I'm proud of it. So love you guys.
Beautiful, Russ. Beautiful.
Yes, that was beautiful, Russ.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, though, see, that's the connection. I mean, we have connection, like our roundhouse. Many people have come to our roundhouse and felt the spirituality that we have there. I had people walk in and almost fall to their knees. And like I tell them, these are things that everyone has. We just lost them in our memory track, and we're just proud that we're able to survive and still hold some of this knowledge out there. And so that's why we're supposed to be teaching it, not hold it to ourselves. And, that's how it gets spread, that the Great Spirit spreads that knowledge. And just at this time, I guess we've been able to have that knowledge. And so we have a responsibility. Now, the other thing too, I want to mention is like, I've had people come to our roundhouse and say, the last time I ever felt anything spiritual was here. And so our ancestors taught it. That's why these houses, what they call subterranean home, that's the purpose, to understand our respect with Mother Earth. And then the world of the people and the spirit world. So we talk about those three worlds all the time that they teach us. And when you come there, the knowledge comes from our ancestors. They're going to walk with you. I've walked so many times. If I didn't have a mentor left but my ancestors would contact me. They would let me know spiritually that I'm doing the right thing, to keep going. So that's really important. And it's those ceremonies, because they tell us we have this important responsibility. Now, a good example, going back to the mountain, we have stories that actually say when the ocean was freshwater and how it got turned to salt water. And so we have this water relationship that goes way back. And those are the stories that need to come out because it shows how important, like when, look at how Russ, when we talked about, the importance of primary water. And a lot of people don't even know what primary water is, and yet it's a connection for all of us. Now, we have stories where there are caverns that went from this lake all the way to the ocean. So we could travel to those caverns. And so all of this knowledge, and it would show us, this is where your medicine's at. This is where this certain, and that's why every time we would go, we'd have to gather those. And when on our way back, we'd have to give gifts to our relatives. Our traditional people would stop off and even give them seaweed when we gathered. See, that's our sharing, our food. So a lot of people right now, we're so colonized, they got us in counties, right? And my county is 2 counties away from the ocean. So we're not considered a coastal county, but yet we gathered every year, and we still do. And we're lucky as elders that we now have young people who drop by and give us seaweed and kelp and, from the ocean. So that's the way we're supposed to share this knowledge. And through that food that is there for all of us, that we don't have to grow, that we didn't have to create. These are natural things and natural medicines. We had 11 plants that were not only food, but for medicinal purposes. And those were common in our food. Now look at 99% of our food. There's none of that in it. So our bodies are being taken from us. And with these different chemicals that are now in our bodies that we now consume. And so we have to adjust to that. So this is why, again, primary water is so important, because the water is our spirit. The water is the real consciousness of all people. And we all have a relationship to that water. So that's what we have to try to reawaken for everyone.
Yes, that's why I think ceremony is so big for us as Native people, because it's the last thing that we have that is of ourselves. That is what our ancestors handed down directly to us, that is not really affiliated with the outside societies. other than us ourselves who live out there that come home to participate in ceremony. But it's a beautiful understanding of who you are. And the children that we are more ever into their ceremonies than we were able to because of outside laws that prevented us from practicing, people that were just hesitant, that couldn't make it back all the time for ceremony. But today's youth, our youth today, they'll travel a long way just to come home for ceremony. And they'll stay over at the ocean for weeks at a time today because they know of our relationship. A lot of these traditions are coming back, but like Jim said, there's so many that have gone. And so we look to our neighbors, our other Native people who still have the use of the similar plants that we have. And we're able to see through them our uses and how we used them and for some of the reasons that we used them. So it's really a something happening on a larger scale. And that's going to include, and we do include, like Jim said, people from all over come to the Roundhouse. They hear their families that have passed in the Roundhouse. And for us to hear these stories of these people coming for the first time that felt their loved ones that have made their journey there with them it's so wonderful. You know you're doing something right when you get feedback like that from strangers. And, so ceremony, I think, is going to be our pathway.
Too, I think one other thing that's important that I never brought up, but is I live by is we were also taught that, and it's kind of like how we're talking about the world is in such turmoil right now, right? And we're moving so fast and all this. Well, one of the ways I believe is that our calendar is off. Okay. We were taught that there are 13 months, 13 moons. Okay. And that's what we celebrated and lived by. So there was actually only like 26 days in each month. And so all of our people are sort of moving in a fast, progressive way where they're not learning the respect and to keep our earth in its cycle, because we're moving in so fast. We only live on 12 months instead of 13 months. And what we were told is that's why when I hear about my elders, they lived to like 120, 130. They didn't die in their 60s and 70s. And that's because of that cycle that we lived on. So all our ceremonies were based on the solstice and the times of those moons. And we were given like spirit plants and animals also that were our mentors. And based on that same calendar, every moon has its own for us. So every one of us, for example, would have a plant associated with a mineral and an animal and a clan that we belong to. So that's how none of that knowledge is being passed on anymore. We're just out there on our own deciding who we are. When there are so many things already just based on when we were born under that moon that gives us our strength, our spirit. So that's one of the things that when I learned that, it really made me understand my direction better.
What I've noticed is when I study cultures around the world, their folklore, their teachings, there's always something called the trickster. In every culture, they have that figure that comes and seduces people, tries to pull them in the wrong direction. And I've wondered when the trickster, because when we study past civilizations, it appears to be always the same pattern, that they get highly advanced technology-wise, and that begins to be their downfall. And we seem to be on this path, collectively speaking, again, where the trickster, in this case, I believe it's artificial intelligence or technology, promises all these things. And now what you both just said is there is a return and a deep spiritual pull of a lot of people to come back to ceremony, learn it again, and to the broader term of ceremony, understanding it again. And then there's the other part of society that is going the path of the trickster, literally becoming technology, infusing themselves merging. In your view, do you see that we have a split that is happening, or do you think there will be a unified path? How do you think that's going to unfold?
Well, again, yes, we definitely have that split, and it's been going on for some time. And our indigenous knowledge is bringing us back to understand it better. And again, I really believe that we have a good future ahead of us, but there has to be these learning cycles that we have to go through. We may be in another 20 or 30 years before we find that, but we have to be on that course. Just by that being spoken out there and passing that on. See, that's the true spiritual learning that we need. And there's a lot of mind learning that, like you say, takes us in so many different directions, and that's where we need to center ourselves. In other words, a lot of people talk about grounding. Have you heard of that? Where, you need to take your shoes off and step on Mother Earth. And that's why in all our ceremonies, we never dance with anything on our feet. That's the connection that we won't let go in the ceremonies, because we have that grounding going on. And it centers us a little better, our families. So every ceremony we have, we come away with something new to help our families grow and help them, even because there's so much, what you call it, intergenerational suffering that has gone on. We pass that on to our, children, and then all they come of is they're upset, they're worried, they don't, and they don't let their spirit really heal them and give them the knowledge that they have. And that's why we say these, like I talk about the minerals, the animals that are your spirit helpers. We need to call on them because they're there for all of us, no matter where we're from. Just recognizing that this Mother Earth gave us life and is giving us life. I mean, look at what we call is her DNA is earth, wind, fire, and water. And look what we've done to all of those elements. Mainly exploited them, and that's all we care about it, not honoring those elements. And a good example right now, I really believe, because our roundhouse, for example, they point to a direction for a reason. And that direction gives us how the earth is what you call turning. And right now, all of those are off. They haven't come back normal. So our Earth Mother is taking care of this global warming, climate change herself. And no matter how much talk we do, she's going to take care of it. And there's going to be people in places that are going to be devastated because of it, because we haven't learned. She has to teach us those lessons. And so we better learn from that. And that's what I see. That's the destruction that's going to happen until we understand. Look at right now, we have a war society, basically, what we live in. Look at all this pandemic, all this stuff going on. What does Hollywood do? The first thing they do is put out a war movie. That's going to unite us all as men. Let's go kill somebody. Let's go, that's always the wrong direction. But that's what they know. That's their life of warriors. And we have to stop being warriors. We have to understand the healing has to come. And I think that's where I really like people that have come across my path, and Russ is a part of that as well. I see the healing we all need, and see what we're waiting for. I believe our indigenous elders are waiting for science to catch up to us, because we don't have to go and make science prove this is right. We believe it in our heart and our spirit. And that's more important than your mind believing it. So that's kind of the way I was taught. And I try to go out to all people to say, you are your own teacher. You become your own mentor. All the people around you. Take in the good from them and throw the bad stuff they have away. Everyone has good. Just that, like we say, it's that same old story of, we all have two wolves in us, a good wolf and a bad wolf. Well, who's going to win? The one that you feed. And see, that's what's been happening, especially with the males. We got that war mentality feeding us, that competition feeding us, not the strength of unity of our families. That's where we're at. So, and those are the people who are our leaders, unfortunately. So anyway, that's like I said, that's some of what I've been taught in my life. And, it's really helped me as a person, and it's helped me in my family as well.
And I feel it's more of a spirit movement. It's how to make things right. It's finding the way back through your cultures, everybody's cultures. And it's for healing. It's for healing our society, solving problems the traditional way, helping our younger people. It's for all nations, for all nationalities. It's balanced spirit. We can bring it. We have the opportunity to bring it all back, especially the next generations, because they'll be dealing with both. They'll be dealing with the technology and the spirit. And I'm sure if we teach them right, they'll be able to deal with both. We've had automation for a long time. And yet we're making the move. Most Native people are making a move back to ceremony and the respect that their ancestors had for their surroundings, the world around them, and the outside world. So I see it as being positive. No matter what lies ahead, I think that if Native people can take a leadership role as first people, we are teachers. We have a lot to offer, a lot of knowledge. And like Jim said, if we're not like scientists, we don't have to prove anything. It's just in the heart. And most people that have a religion, a strong religious faith, they know the truth. When they hear the truth, they'll know it. And that's what I think I personally count on.
One of the things I wanted to share was one of the, this is probably about 20, maybe 40 years ago, this happened to us, but we had a visitor to our roundhouse, and they were Baha'is. You know what the Baha'i religion is?
Yeah.
And they were so overwhelmed. Not only did we have 9 poles in the roundhouse, but their leaders in their prophecy said that the only ones that can lead all people back into illumination is the Native people of Turtle Island. And that's what they said when they came to our roundhouse. Mm-hmm. And it felt so good, to me, that they recognized that. And so that's what they believed, that we're the only one left that hasn't sold away our spirituality, and that we are the ones to illuminate the whole world.
If I may be completely honest, that's exactly how I feel. That's exactly how I have felt for most of my life. And every day I feel even stronger. And that's why we have dedicated, so much of our energy and love and time into bringing this picture to people that could and will benefit from it. The element that brought all of us together is water. And you all spoke on primary water. What the people that have heard about it and feel a deep connection in our audience have asked is, what do we do with it? How do we access it? Beyond what we today, we go, okay, so there's primary water, we're going to drill and bring it up. But that's not, in my understanding, that is not the path. So what is the path to the reconnection with water, with primary water?
I just wanted to say how important this one meeting is. And, this whole thing with the understanding of divine mother, or the nature, or, the feminine part of God is so much more valuable right now. And what's teaching us about that is that our earth is alive. Water is alive. And of course, what we learned in the past to different scientists and so on, they go prove it and so on. But more or less, this is what you're talking to. These two people here are some of the most important people in the world, because they understand the grounding of nature and the love of nature and the call that they have towards other people in the world. Being the last of the old deceivable, that's what I call it. But it doesn't matter what you call it. But primary water, it comes from below the mantle. And it's like a little child that needs to come up. And it's burrowing its way to the sunlight is what it is. That's what we feel. And the importance of that burrowing its way independently is important. And yes, we have learned so many things from our scientists in the past that you can drill there and pull water out of it. But it isn't like if you have a relationship with water. And that's where I see these two people are so valuable to the rest of the world. Now, we're just going to sit and laugh and joke and stuff about some of the things. And we did this. We understand that. But more or less, I believe that we can understand the Ring of Fire and why the Ring of Fire is important to the rest of the world. Not only just this Ring of Fire, that happened 23 million years ago, but the others on the Atlantic side as well. And there's a connection between the Atlantic side, which happened 100 million years ago. And this kind of science was always lost. And so if you want to get these people to understand science, it's really the science of the heart. And that's where you're at. I don't know what else to say except for what we've done on the East Coast now is probably something that is coming to the West. East meets West, and I always call it Kanaktai, and I understand that it was said wrong, but this is what I wrote the book about. Once upon a time there was a volcano, and that volcano basically taught us, and that volcano is alive. And so much alive that it talks to us, it relates to us. And the people here now are relating to that. And we have a group of people now who are part of the Native Americans on the East Coast where the Iroquois have called me, and because they said, hey, listen, we're part of you. We understand you. We love you, And I said, why do you love me? Well, because you're talking exactly what we're experiencing as well. So we have a large group who are studying even the Bible and the formula of what Moses did, basically. And so that understanding of the formula or the herbs or the things that we could learn from each other, from different Native Americans all over the world. I'm saying all over the world because Indians may be Indians according to what we've said so many, many millions of years ago in that form of what we call the Ring of Fire. So we're sitting on, it's very evident that we can sit here and talk about this one place in this country is very important to the rest of the world. And that's why, the Ring of Fire in Hawaii is, where it started, and all this stuff is very valuable for information. But I'm just saying that if you ground yourself and if this understanding that we are one and united, and how much do we have to be united, what you figured out is the importance of keeping not just the duality of bits and bats or yes and no, by a computer, but the third entity, which is the love that you have for each other. That is so valuable to the rest of the world. And those who are just working on their computers and doing their bits and bats know this. They really do. And that's where you're at. And I'm astounded. I mean, just the other day, I sit there and pushed a button on the computer, the thing, and I get Jim. Jim, he says, "Where are you, Russ? What's going on?" I'm trying to get all of John. All of that is connections. These are miracles that happen all the time from the heart. And I don't doubt it at all. And, been doing this for 26 years. And I should have stopped many years ago, but because it's in my heart and because I love people like you who stand up for justice, real justice and forgiveness to other people is more justice than ever. And I just wanted to thank you. I don't want to say more, but okay, that's it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Russ. I mean, all the people that I've dealt with that are your friends that connected with you around the primary water. I mean, they're some of the best people Gail and I have met in our lifetime. And we still love to hear from Anna out of Kentucky, who calls us on our radio program. And,
Yes.
it's such a great, I can just feel her spirit, you know, and it's so, it really just warms our heart when we get to hear her talk. And so, and as well as Chris and other people who have seen, that's what we're trying to bring, that consciousness here. And I've been able to do some of that through my radio program. And, you know, we're actually celebrating 25 years of me being on Lake County Community Radio here. Oh, wow. And this is what I talk about at our radio stations. And I also bring up things like racism and, you know, all what has happened to us, so people could understand the history that we've been living here, the duality of America that they don't see that other minorities are living. We just last week went down and supported the United Farm Workers and marched with them because they're trying to get a bill where they can have their own, you know, union and they have a right to vote. But the governor didn't sign the bill, you know, and we were saying, look at this right here. This is, these people here are so important to all of us. We don't realize how impact these workers have on every one of our food source, but we don't care about it because we can just run to a fast food place, you know, buy a meal or whatever. We have to understand that this balance that we're losing. And I'm really proud that, like I said, people are coming back and helping. And Gail and I are so proud because every time we hear somebody that, wow, they're on their own consciousness road now. And maybe, and that water is going to do it for them as well as it's done for the rest of our people. So that's our connection to each other. Every one of us have a waterway that we can connect to each other. And whether that's the birth canal, you know, through the women, we all have that connection.
Jim, can I say one thing? Just one more thing. You know, through the time that I've known you, you know, we're trying to figure out how to do this, but to restore the wisdom of the people that exist there, we restore the water. But I'm so, the wisdom that you have is so valuable to other people in the world. And so to do that, I always thought that there would be a way to actually find where the water is on the property that you lived on. And so I did everything to get the technicians out there to, you know, to douse it and and then to get other technicians or dowsers that would, you know, okay that and say, you know, it would be that I would get 3 or 4 different technicians. And there was one spot there that I know that they all went to, and I didn't tell anybody, you know, where it was. And they looked it up and they said, that's exactly the spot. Okay. So I said, okay, we'll just, because we know that there's too much mercury and the EPA won't allow us to do this, but you live right on the land where we know we mapped it out. And we said, if we just go to that place and pray and bring the water up, I'm pretty sure this is going to happen. But it's been a dream of mine for, I don't know how many, 15 years since we started this. And I always thought that eventually I would be able to explain that and to bring water back, not from the lake because we already polluted the lake, you know, but to find.
Russ, what you're talking about is that matriarch feeling of spirituality. See, that's what a good example. We were just a little lessons, and I still have lessons every day for myself. And, you know, we were outside in our yard trying to, you know, a guy, what do you do to get rid of a sticker? I'm going to get a weed eater. I'm going to chop it out, or I'm going to dig it up. Right. Well, my wife says, no, just in the morning, just get there and pull it out by the root. So see, that's the female thinking that we need to come back to us. So this water is going to come to us that same way. Yes. Once our consciousness comes together, we don't need to dig for it.
That's what I'm saying. You know, I don't want to dig for it. You know, and that's why we're looking at the Moses formula, because the Moses, that, you know, through the kindness that he had, you know, he could bring the water up. That's that story, okay? Then that's a good story. But we've known that there are places on the East Coast that actually happens, you know, and they bring the water up by just a kind thought or or an adjusted. We don't need to drill wells anymore, but people have to prove it themselves, and that's what they have to do to learn this. But this water that exists, this little child water, this innocence that comes from the heart is yearning to be with us. All of creation is yearning for the redemption of man. This is what you're doing. It's so valuable and important to the rest of the people to learn this. Mm-hmm. And I'm just honored to be able to sit and talk to both of you. It's just an honor.
So am I.
Thank you. All right. And like you said, Russ, it's a child. It's still in the child stage. 15 years you've been thinking about it, and only it's come into my life maybe only 5 years ago. So I think once the spirit for it is out there, it'll come to more people. And like Jim said, once we're on a conscious level, then it'll start to happen, because we'll all start to find out, and we'll all start to think about it, and it'll become part of all our lives. And so it'll just naturally happen on its own, I believe. And then it'll come to us. It'll come to us on its own when it's ready, just like when you're birthing a child.
Yes, thank you. We don't want to birth a child in pollution. We don't want to do that. Yeah, I understand.
It'll all happen on its own naturally, I think, in a good way, because we're going about it in a good way. So I think that's the spirit.
We're showing up, aren't we? Yeah, we're showing up.
Yes.
That's what Chris always said. Just show up. Okay.
Yes.
So here we are.
Wow. How powerfully put. Because this is literally when people ask us, why do you do what you do and how do you do what you do? And literally, I say we show up for what is being put in front of us every day. What the Creator puts in front of us, we show up for it. And sometimes it makes great sense to us. Sometimes it doesn't, but still it's to be done. And then we can understand it later. I wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart for your time, for your wisdom, and honoring all of that. I don't want to take up too much of it, but I would also like to ask you, for our viewers, where can they listen to the radio show? And are there other places where they can learn more about your teachings and maybe even connect with you?
Okay, thank you. Well, yes. Well, for example, for the radio show, we're live every Tuesdays. And I actually have 2 programs. So Tuesdays from 4 to 5, I have a program called Voices of Turtle Island, which is all Native American indigenous music and spoken word. So many of the other chiefs that are out there, I bring up them. And I don't know if you know John Trudell. I do a lot of John Trudell, and then a lot of the music. And then from 5 to 6 o'clock is our program called Tribal Voices Radio. And that's more of a political show that talks about government issues, tribal issues that are going on currently. We do history and culture with that program. So the way to contact us is we're on the internet at www.kpfz.org. That's where we stream at. Mm-hmm. And locally, of course, you can only get us in our county on the FM is 88.1 FM. And then those programs all repeat. For example, the Voices of Turtle Island repeats Thursdays from 3 to 4. And Tribal Voices Radio repeats on Mondays from 4 to 5. So like I said, we're celebrating 25 years, and I was so proud again because I got involved with another friend of mine named Clayton Duncan has a show too, and our community was getting together and they were rallying because they didn't want a prison to come into our county, and so a lot of people organized and they asked our Native American community about it, and so we spoke up, and the guy started at the time, what do you call that? Pirate radio station. And we joined it. And then within 2 years, we became community low playing. And then we came into full power after about 8 years. So we're a part of that community. And that's what we do. We bring up, and it's probably one of the only community radio stations that have 2 Native American programmers that have been with the station from the beginning. And so we're so proud that we're able to share that with our community here. And of course, we get a lot of people who don't like hearing what we were talking about, but we get more and more positive responses from everyone because we're speaking from our heart to our people. And so that's where you can get us at. As a matter of fact, we do have a call-in, which is our studio phone is 707-263-3435 that you can call in and interact with both programs at. So that's what we do. We've been doing that for a while. Most of my life, I actually was worked as a tribal administrator since 1974. So I have a lot of direct experience on developing tribal sovereignty at the government level. And I tell you, that is very frustrating. And there's a lot of corruption, unfortunately, in those businesses. So a lot of our people, for example, have been disenrolled from their tribes. That's a big thing that's going on. And then we're going to be opening up our website. And I'm happy because my daughter and many of our people are the technical people that Gail and I need. We're not real technical. They're helping us. And they said, you know what? We need to build a website so that way you can share this with everyone. So we're going to try to open it up October 1st. And it's going to be called the East Lake Tribe. And that's going to have all our information, all our history and all that on it. And so I'm looking forward to that to myself, that we can share all of this information with the public.
Oh, that's wonderful. What a blessing. So East Lake Tribe, that's going to be live on October 1st. And, yes. And the rest, we'll put all the links in the video description. Okay. Gail, Jim, and of course, Russell, thank you all so much. We'll put the primary water links also so people can learn more about it. I'm deeply honored and thankful to have had this time with you. And I look forward to sharing this now with our viewers so they can benefit from it as well. And I would also like to extend an open invitation, if you have time and if you feel inspired, to come join us again sometime and share more. We would love to learn more.
Thank you very much. We're honored to be on your program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you all.
All right.
Thank you.
And thank you, Inspired Tribe. We appreciate you. We love you. And we'll be back with you again very, very soon.